I'm going to jump with one of my own to begin with, maybe. Can I ask you, Regina, just a quick question with regards to the trends in terms of volunteering? You have, so what is happening in the Philippines? Do you think volunteerism is growing? And if so, why? What do you think is the reason?
It's a growing trend, I must say, because, well, in the field of disaster preparedness, I can see a lot of people who are really interested in joining and helping a lot. But there are still challenges to promote volunteering in the Philippines because, of course, of our economic situation. And, well, I would say it's growing.
Thanks, Regina. And Akiko, maybe when I have the mic, just a quick question in terms of, you talked about International Year for Volunteerism plus 10. Concretely, how can organizations, while there is a clear way of engage, as an individual, for people to engage with the process, could you also discuss very briefly on how organizations can engage with that celebration of the decade of International Year for Volunteering?
Sure. For internationally, UNV is designated to be a focal point for this IYV and IYV plus 10. But in the Philippines, we have the strong government partners. PNBSCA is a national also focal point for IYV plus 10. And we have this national committee for IYV plus 10 organized by PNBSCA together with UNV and volunteer organizations. So I think last year we have come up with a draft action plan which was shared with you, some of the partner agencies, and which is downloadable from our websites. So if you could refer to the document, and if you can come up with some initiatives regarding volunteering for MDG, or even promoting volunteerism itself through the IYV plus 10, we are happy to hear your initiatives and probably be able to construct something joint program or projects together. But first, maybe you can refer to our website's information. Also, we have some booth, UNB booth, so we can show it to you. And yeah, PNBSA, UNB could be a focal point.
Thanks, Akiko. Questions? Comments? Yes, please, ma'am. Reminder to please say your name and the organization that you represent.
I'm Ruth Mendoza. I'm with CBM International. The world is becoming more and more dangerous place to live in, and there's so much work to be done. However, I'm just curious, based on your experience, and it could be any one of you to answer this, has the situation wherein things have become very dangerous become a deterrent for people to do volunteer work, especially in countries where man-made disaster or armed conflict are quite prevalent?
As far as I know, maybe friends from VSO Bahaginan can also respond to it. But let me probably say something about VSO Bahaginan's program. As far as I know about VSO Bahaginan, is that they don't send volunteers to areas where it's dangerous. So there are also precautions, there are also limitations in volunteering with VSO. In countries where there are still existing conflict, so it is not advisable for volunteers to be there, except maybe for, say, in a situation where it's post-conflict and the nature of the role is to assist in rehabilitation. But right now, VSO is not yet into that kind of volunteering work. Am I right? Maybe I can ask the director of VSO Bahaginan to clarify the program of VSO.
And once she does that, it would also be interesting to hear from Akiko what the take of the UN volunteers is on this issue.
There are different kinds of engaging with volunteers. There are volunteers who are into disaster preparedness, like what volunteers of Oxfam are mostly doing. UN volunteers also go to fragile states where the service of volunteers are on direct service delivery. These volunteers are on one-off volunteer engagement, providing the necessary services and skills needed at that kind of context where the democracy is still emanating in one country. So for example, there are a lot of UN volunteers in Congo, providing that building of helping them come out from a country who is still on conflict. VSO's type of volunteering is more on stable communities, where there is already a sufficient ground for development work to come in. So this is the next phase of volunteering work, which we call volunteering for development. These are for countries or communities where the community is already ready to really work on a strategic framework, a kind of work that will bring long-lasting impact and effect. So there are these different kinds of volunteerism in which different volunteer organizations and volunteer-involving organizations are doing. So volunteers can be in any situation, and these are depending also on the person coming up to that call. So it depends on you on what kind of involvement and engagement you like and what kind of change you want to happen.
Thank you, Malu. Thank you. Akiko, would you like to add to the discussion, please?
For UNP case, we work for, again, peace and development. So in the situation of conflict, we also deploy the UNPs at the needs of the request of the agencies as well as the government. So we have the volunteers working for humanitarian assistance, quick relief, emergency relief, as well as the development planning. But now in the conflict, the world is becoming more danger and danger. So how people can be strong to become lend the hands to the others. I think it's really also, as Maru, VSO director, also mentioned, it depends on the personal capacity as well as the willingness. But if you see the situation of the world, we really need the support for everyone. Everyone should be aware what's going on, and any help really actually be a help for helping the communities in the needs of the community as well. So I think for UNPs, we really work with the conflict situations as well as the ongoing development situations.
And it would also be interesting, I would also like to invite participation from the audience here, because I know Regina mentioned and there are return volunteers, and I'm sure these are not only issues of existing fragility in states, but it would also be a situation where it deteriorates while you are there. Kenya is a perfect example after the elections, where there was a 2-month period when things went bad. So it would also be interesting to hear experiences from volunteers who had such experience. And of course, other questions or comments, please. Yes, please. Your name and your organization.
Good afternoon, sir. And all of you. I'm Roy from the Office of Secretary Dinky Suleiman of DSWD. Actually, right now we have a volunteer program. In fact, we have initial meeting with Ms.Akiko 2 weeks ago. Then we have a framework of Bantay. This is the projects and activities on anti-corruption. So right now we have a controversial program, the CCT, Conditional Cash Transfer. So if you're going to see the land bank, no, Abang Pina. So in that program, the volunteers can help us in the validation of beneficiaries. So we have also Gabay. This is a mechanism extending technical assistance. The volunteers can help us also in the value formation of the pools of the pool. Of course, the Tulay, facilitated feedback monitoring, especially in the grievance redress system, no? GRS, and of course, Agapay, if you have technical expertise in terms of technical know-how in the, we have projects in Kalay Seeds, of course, Yake for the livelihood, and Pantawid Pamilya. So my question right now is, as UNV and Ms. Regina, can we tap also international and or national volunteers with expertise on the livelihood and of course the disaster risk and of course the technical aspect of our project. But right now we have already conducted 8 regional workshops for volunteers nationwide. So next week we're traveling to Coronadan. No? If you have time, you can join us in the workshop planning with our Muslim brothers and sisters. Of course, my question is, we can tap the international or national expert in this matter. And of course, this is also the venue for all of us to help us also in this advocacy and our anti-poverty programs, especially on the transparency aspect of the program. Thank you.
So the questions, two of you.
For VSO Bahaginan, I cannot speak in behalf of the director, but the office of VSO Bahaginan is at 131 West Avenue, Quezon City, and I'm sure they are very happy to talk about and discuss the details of your request, because currently they are very active in promoting national volunteering. Yes.
And for UNP as well, I think there's ongoing discussions how we can reactivate this Bayanihan Bayang program for government service, which is also coordinated by PNPSCA. It's promoting the volunteer program at the government level, but also call on the support from public-private partners, FPOs, any partners. So I think PSWD has a really good example of mainstreaming this program into the government level and trying to really reach the community. So we hope that UNP could also support those initiatives on the ground.
Okay. I am told that this is the second last question. I've been asked to make this last, but I'm using my discussion to make it the second last.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. I am Ms.Regina Gaza from Ateneo de Manila University. Going back to the question earlier about the frameworks on volunteerism, I came here actually in light of my thesis, because my thesis is on volunteerism in the Philippines. And I was interested also in the sharing of the practitioners here, because what I'm trying to do is to find a possible framework to relate the different discourses in volunteerism, because there are levels of issues there. On one hand, we see the important role of volunteer organizations in forming, for instance, students or citizens, etc. But on the other hand, because of the changes and the need and the mandate to make volunteerism as a national strategy for development, and more clearly this year with the volunteerism for the MDGs, then even volunteer organizations themselves carry the challenge / the burden of also producing impact. So I think there was one person earlier who talked about that from VSO. It is the struggle really, because when I interview, for instance, JVP, the Jesuit Volunteers of the Philippines, or the Assumption Missionaries of the Philippines, or even Efren Peña Florida's group, they have different constructions regarding this. Because, for instance, in the academe or in your organizations, most of volunteer managers go into these activities because they want to form their students. But since ang term nila, nandun na rin naman tayo sa ground, might as well let's find something to produce impact. So one of the things that I see in the discussions is that I think there should be a better collaborative efforts between those who have volunteerism efforts that produce impact with those who are still not producing that much measurable results yet. But at the same time, there's another angle to it, because as said earlier and also in the other sessions, there's a wide range of models for volunteerism in the Philippines. We always go back to the Ondoy or to the storms, to the relief operations, and that's what we highlight because that's what's loud at certain moments. And the question becomes, so where does volunteerism go after what happens to them, after the disaster happens? But the thing is, I don't think there's enough attention given to you practitioners that it's a very constant effort to make volunteerism a way of life, to make volunteerism present in everything. So I guess what I'm also looking for from the panel is that given the wide range of discourses in volunteerism, what is that direction that volunteer organizations can go to in order to address both formation and the demand for impact on volunteerism in the Philippines?
Thank you. I'm going to have to stop you there and invite reactions from the panel. And I have to give the panel 1 minute each only, and I'm looking at your watch.
Okay, so discourse regarding...
It starts now.
Oh, okay. Regarding the volunteerism. Yes, there are different types of volunteer organizations promoting volunteerism. The definitions or understanding of volunteerism, it could be varied. So UNV's working on the definitions as well as the broad understanding of the volunteerism at the international level, but also we would like to closely coordinate with UNVSCA, defining what's really the Philippine term of volunteerism, and as well as promoting these efforts of MDGs on the ground, what will be the really needs of the community, not coming from us putting the agenda of volunteer for MDG, but we also, that's why we really like to hear that local initiatives coming from the people or the community, what is their needs of the community, and which could be really, actually related to MDG. MDG is really all about development, from education to health, environment, everything related to the society. So I guess people could easily relate it to what they would like to improve in their community through volunteering.
Regina, would you like to add to that from your experience?
Okay. I've seen Sir Lito here, who's the director of the Philippine National Volunteering Service Coordinating Agency. Is he here now? So that's the umbrella organization that deals with volunteering in the Philippines. And that serves, I said umbrella because the organization hosts these models, different volunteering organizations, in addressing standardization or approaches to volunteering. VSO Bahaginan in particular is coming up with standards. And it is running courses like volunteer program development and management, am I right, French? Basically promoting systems in volunteering, managing volunteers. And if you're interested in linking, learning, sharing your experience in volunteering, and develop models or coming up with standards on volunteering, we can link with VSO Bahaginan and PNVSPA for that matter.
Thank you, Regina. I know there is one last question, and sir, I will have to ask you to make it short and crisp. Your name and organization, please.
Daniel. Hello, Ms.Akiko from Child and Family Service in Baguio. I was interested, not more of the question, but a suggestion that VSO and the different volunteer groups set up more training programs, because I think our problem in NGOs is volunteer management and capacity building. And that is really the key to bringing more young people on board. And also many NGOs don't have the capacity to run this, and maybe some funding can be brought to bear on different regions on how we can really maximize, especially with VSO, the competencies that are needed to really bring, because volunteers need to be managed, volunteer programs need to be designed, etc., to maximize them. And I think the UN and VSO can be very helpful in this. Thank you. And we are actually willing to host the venue, because we have venues in the north.
Thank you, sir, for the comment. One final one. This is the last one.
Very short. Hello, very, very short. I am not yet a volunteer. I came here actually out of curiosity in my own time. I found the speech of Senator Gordon very inspiring. The forum very, very interesting. So my question is, how do you become a volunteer, or where do you start as a volunteer?
Yes, Regina.
Maybe for the details, there are desks outside. that can provide you very specific answers to questions related to your interest in volunteering. So you can help on the tables outside, because there are a lot of volunteer organizations who exhibit, set up their exhibit on volunteering.
You will have to make a choice, sir. There are lots of opportunities right there. Thank you. I just wanted to, before we conclude, somebody's assisting me in doing the summarization, and may I please request the documenter who summarize. Okay, I can conclude. All right. Well, great. I think it was an interesting discussion. Before I formally thank the speakers, I think there are two key messages that I'm taking away. I think one of them is that while there is an international movement that is led by you and me for promoting volunteerism, what is also important to remember that this entire endeavor is necessary, and as Regina and Akiko pointed out in their presentations and responses to some of the very interesting questions that were raised, that there is an increased need, despite the increasing fragility of different states and increasing problems of the world, there is an increasing need for volunteering, not only internationally but locally. And also, the other big point that I'm taking from this, and I hope the audiences also, is that the fact that there is this concept of brain gain. Once you volunteer as an international or a national volunteer, when you go and volunteer with a community which is within your country but outside of your hometown, and when you come back, you not only are able to provide something to that community, but you bring something back. I think that is the key message that we heard here. With that, I would very much like to thank both Akiko and Regina Gaza for a very lively and encouraging discussion, and also the responses. We have, of course, come to realize that we are a vital part of the whole global movement of volunteering, and let's hope we will continue. With this new knowledge and insights, I would like to end the second breakout session with a reminder that we are going to go into the plenary after this. And thank you once again. I was actually looking at how many people were sleeping, and actually I didn't see too many. So that I think says a lot about the panelists here. Thank you once again for your excellent participation.
Thank you very much to our moderator, Ms.